Welcome to the Experience Darden podcast. I'm your host, Brett Twitty, and you are listening to a new episode. On this episode of the podcast, I'm excited to share my recent conversation with Myles Stroud. Myles is a second-year student in our Full-Time MBA Class of 2023, and he is also one of the co-presidents of the Darden Military Association. Myles and I recently connected to talk more about his background, how he decided to pursue an MBA, what led him to Darden, plans for the Darden Military Association in the year ahead, and so much more. I think you're really going to enjoy this conversation. So without further ado, here is my interview with Myles Stroud. Myles, welcome to the podcast.
Brett, thanks for having me today.
It's great to talk with you. Here you are. I guess another quarter has opened here, your post-fall break. How are you feeling?
I'm feeling good. Coming off fall break, definitely refreshed. I had a pretty academically intensive first quarter. Q2 is a little bit lighter load, which I know me and my partner are both excited about.
All right, for our listeners, tell us what an academically intensive quarter looked like for you as a second-year student.
Sure. So it was all self-induced. I was in 7 classes, if you include interviewing potential Darden students. 2 reasons for that. One, the classes that I wanted to take just happened to be in Q1. I want to make the most of my time here at Darden, kind of like fill in areas that I haven't got to experience before. And those classes just happen to fall during Q1, but also looking forward to kind of the end of the year. If I took a few more classes, at the beginning of the second year, I can take a few less kind of at the end, especially going into graduation and transitioning my family. I thought having a little extra time would be beneficial.
Yeah, 7 classes is a tall order, but I guess you've got those in your rear view mirror now.
I do, yeah. 4 to 5 is about kind of like the average, I think.
So you also mentioned that you're interviewing prospective Darden students, applicants, as part of the Student Admissions Committee. What's that been like? Have you enjoyed that?
It's been really great. I actually interviewed with a Darden student when I was interviewing to come here. So when the opportunity cropped up this summer, I kind of jumped at it. I think it's really exciting to be the face of Darden when these folks are interviewing to get in. It's really great to meet folks. I view kind of my role as interviewer as advocate for all the interviewees that I have. Hopefully they give me all the right information I need to advocate for them. It's just been a really incredible experience. Additionally, for the Second Year Admissions Committee, also lead a lot of the tours that are here on Darden. So when folks come for open houses or admit days or whatever it might be, I get the chance to show them around Darden and what makes it a great place.
Well, that's awesome. So for our listeners, who knows? You may very well have Myles. If you apply and you're invited to interview, you may very well interview with Myles. Those interviews are conducted by second-year students as well as members of our admissions committee. But always a great conversation. I think that's one of the things I really enjoy about our interview approach is you don't know really anything about the person, right? These are anonymous interviews. The interviewer has not read the application, does not have a copy of the resume in front of them. And you're really coming to that conversation to learn directly from the applicant about their story. It's always a great experience.
Absolutely. And no 2 interviews are the same. So I just love getting to hear everyone's version of their story.
All right. Well, let's talk a little bit more about you, Myles. So tell us a little bit more about who you are. What was your background? What did you do before coming to Darden?
Yeah, sure. So originally, I grew up outside Wichita, Kansas, small little town called Derby, about 30,000 folks or so. I ended up going to undergrad at Harvard. And then after that, I commissioned into the Marine Corps. People always ask, why would you go to Harvard and then join the Marine Corps? That was actually kind of a detour for me. I was dead set coming out of high school about going into military service. I loved team sports growing up. I think I learned a lot of life lessons, and that was really important to me. However, I was too short, too slow to really play team sports professionally, right, and make a living out of it. But I loved working as a team, loved solving complex problems, loved the physical adversity of it. So the next best thing for me was to join the military, right, and become a military officer, leadership, lots of bravado and whatnot associated with that, and also just like giving back, right. So I feel like people did it for me, so that I could grow up, prosperous in Kansas and safe. And so for me, it was my way to kind of like pay my toll, if you will, and pay it forward for other folks. So after Harvard, I commissioned as an infantry officer in the Marine Corps, and spent 5 years, almost 5 years, based out of Camp Lejeune, North Carolina. From there, I was a platoon commander, a company XO, and then I was a liaison officer to a three-star command in Afghanistan called CSTICA, the Combined Security Transition Command Afghanistan. That was pretty late in the kind of like the Afghan cycle. I was there from 2019 to 2020. Came back, and then I was the regimental training officer for 8th Marine Regiment right before they shut down. So pretty typical, military career for a junior officer as far as progression, having a platoon of 60 Marines and sailors, being responsible, getting them trained, prepared for whatever the upcoming deployment is. Very similar as an XO, being kind of like the primary operations and planning manager for a company of 200 or so Marines and sailors, getting to learn like the cross-functional leadership and leading your peers and kind of mentoring junior lieutenants when they come in. Really enjoyed my time in Afghanistan. It was very interesting getting to work with a lot of our NATO partners. So I was in a NATO command. There was like 13 countries just in my section alone. So, really eye-opening experience, broadening experience. And when I came back, kind of actually one of the interesting facts about myself, all three of the units, 3rd Battalion, 8th Marines, Task Force Southwest, and 8th Marine Regiment that I was in, were shut down within 6 months of me leaving the Marine Corps. Hopefully, by no direction or like direct impact that I had, just one of those weird oddities.
Well, you mentioned that you'd always had your eye on military service, that was part of your plan. I'm curious, did you always know that you were going to pursue an MBA? Was that something that you always knew was in your future?
No, I did not. And I know I talk to students all the time. They tell me in the interviews, hey, in undergrad, I just always knew that MBA was going to be in my future. That was just not the path that I took. I think if anything, I probably was more considering law school. So essentially, I had to make the decision whether or not to stay in the Marine Corps or exit when I was deployed to Afghanistan. And, it was really tough to find mentors who knew, both sides, business and military life, through no fault of their own. I was just surrounded by a lot of career officers and staff NCOs, and the military was their career. Fortunately, we had a reserve company that was deployed with us, and the reserve company commander had some business school and business experience. He actually was a Darden grad, and so he put Darden on my radar. And then as well, he had been in investment banking and consulting, which were two of the careers that I was considering at the time. Fairly common, well-trodden path for junior military officers as they're transitioning out. So he kind of was like, hey, sit down, young lieutenant. Let me tell you about this thing called an MBA, and let me show you like what kind of doors it opens to you as far as the business world goes.
Wow, that's an incredible story. What are the chances that that person just happened to be there and you could pick their brain about it?
No, it's incredible. And then also, as I was leaving, so I came to Darden from Wilmington, North Carolina. I actually saw that same officer on a flight as he was moving to Wilmington, North Carolina. So just a lot of coincidences with him.
What was it about an MBA that really resonated with you? You recognizing that, like, okay, so you thought business, maybe after initially thinking about pursuing a legal path. So here you are, you're at Darden. But what was it about an MBA that really appealed?
Yeah, I think a couple things. The first one just being like, if there's anything that the Marine Corps taught me was like the value of education, right, and training. And so an MBA, I studied government and classics in undergrad, softer, right? Like I wasn't a finance guy or an econ guy, and I had some leadership experience in the military, but I didn't know much about business. I always make the joke, and this is true, that I didn't know what an NPV was when I showed up to Darden. Pretty like, foundational finance concept. So for me, I thought, okay, I value education. I value training. Let me go somewhere that's going to kind of give me these foundational skills in education and business. So for me, that was kind of top one, is like, hey, I need to gain some book skills in this thing called business. The next thing is just the variety of kind of exit opportunities from business school that you can go into, right? You can go into consulting, you can go into all kinds of arms of finance, you can go into general management. I really liked having the optionality of getting an MBA and then kind of exiting to wherever I found my niche when I was here at Darden.
I appreciate that point. And for our listeners who may also be puzzling at this moment or maybe Googling MPV, what is that? Net
present value. So essentially, It's the present value of some type of investment minus whatever the actual investment it costs. That's where the net part comes in.
Appreciate your indulging with that cold call, Myles. Your story, being a government classics major, coming to Darden MBA program where you're going to have to take things like accounting and finance is not so unfamiliar as you know from your experience, your classmates' experience. This whole traditional, non-traditional binary that people talk about, I feel like it's fully broken down, and particularly broken down at a place like like Darden General Management Program. You're going to have a core. I do think the core appeals to people who may not have had as much prior experience. You're going to have to go through these topics. Is that something that also resonated with you? It sounds like it did.
Yeah, absolutely. I was actually very nervous about going to other schools where initially you get a choose your own adventure approach. There are schools out there, and if that's your style, absolutely go for it. For me, I really liked Darden's kind of like aspect of core. It's like, hey, we're going to give you a lot of foundation in finance, accounting, marketing, strategy. And I think Darden also, not only just the classes, but the timing of the classes for someone like me, it was kind of hard pivoting, trying to go into consulting. They peaked and they timed it out very, very well, so that when it came time for interviewing, I had the skills that I needed, knowing that I was going to get the opportunity to do the choose your own adventure approach and kind of study the stuff that really piqued my interest, or skills that I was lacking in Q4, and also the entirety of the second year. One point is the traditional, non-traditional. One career that I think really kind of overlaps or has a lot of similarities with the military. I was very surprised to find this out, and why I didn't think about it before, is the folks that come from teaching, specifically the folks that come from like Teach from America. I was just astounded at the similarities as far as like, hey, you're put into an environment where you're responsible for a lot of things kind of immediately, not necessarily have the decision-making authority that you would like to have, but you have to be able to lead, work through ambiguity, and creatively problem solve. I was very impressed with my classmates that came from TFA.
That's such an interesting point. I appreciate you sharing that. We talked to some TFA alums here on the podcast. And now that you mention it and you outline it in that way, that is a lot of what they share about their experience. So I picked up, I moved to a part of the country maybe I wasn't super familiar with. All of a sudden I had all these students who were looking at me, and I was teaching school, and here we go. I've got to figure this out. So probably a good preparation for an MBA program, because I feel like a lot of the first year experience is, okay, I might not know a ton about this. Case methods new, business schools new, recruiting, all this stuff. You're learning a ton and navigating a fair amount of ambiguity as you do it.
Yeah, no, amazing. Very impressed. Also with the traditional folks as well, but as far as the non-traditional binary goes, the Teach for America folks just really stood out, and we had a lot in common. Sometimes we could lament that as we were sitting in Cafe 67 or stressing about an upcoming problem set or something like that.
Were there other aspects of the Darden experience that resonated with you, Myles?
Yeah. So like when I was kind of like choosing Darden, right? Again, I had a mentor who had been there. He spoke the ground truth. He hadn't led me astray yet, so that's what kind of put it like on my short list initially. But obviously, I came home and had to start kind of like the preparation, studying for the GRE, taking that, doing more research. Funnily enough, after I'd actually already applied to Darden, there's another business school that has kind of a test toolkit where you can select factors that are important to you in a business school. So I'd already applied. Applications are already downrange and submitted. But I was like, what the heck? Let me take this test. And sure enough, maybe it was selection bias, having already went through the process, but Darden came out as my number one school on that test, right? So I needed a place that was academically rigorous, given what I perceived to be my weaknesses. I knew that I was going to get that here from one, all the materials, going to webinars, speaking to current students, especially other military veterans that had transitioned from similar backgrounds, similar professional backgrounds. The next thing was the schools kind of give you the answers to the test, right? Like I always tell folks, look at the career reports. They're telling you where their graduates go, what industries they place in, what locations and cities they place in. And when I looked at that for Darden, I knew that I wanted to do consulting in the Southeast. And frankly, there just wasn't a better school. Like I said, my partner and I came from Wilmington, North Carolina. I'm from Kansas. These are just from upstate New York. Neither of us wanted to go back to those places. So we wanted to settle in a place that was close to home. So for us, that was the southeastern United States, hopefully somewhere that wasn't too far from the ocean. Uh, it's tight knit, right? If you look at the size of the student body compared to other business schools, I really like the aspect of, the entire school is 350-ish. And then you have your section that you get to know very well throughout core of 70 individuals. Fun fact, the students that I had assigned seating with through my Q1 section of core, I went on spring break with them. We trekked across Utah, went to 4 of the national parks, went to Las Vegas, stopped in Park City. It's just incredible getting to be immersed in that tight knit community. The next one is location. Again, we're from the southeastern United States. We wanted to go to a great business school that was going to be close to home. A lot of family support, friend support from folks that I knew in the Marine Corps that had been stationed maybe up near Quantico or in DC. My partner had 2 friends, one from high school, one from college. It was in the local area. And one, we like the outdoors as well, right? So great premier access to the outdoors. We always say that we traded the ocean for the mountains. Hopefully, when we end up back in Charlotte, we won't be too far from either as well. And, frankly, my partner factored a lot into my decision as far as hey, how are you going to feel at Darden? And Darden was great, both in the Darden Military Association and also the Darden Partner Association, in linking up current partners with my partner and just explaining to her, hey, here's what Darden is like. Here's the kind of the daily schedule for your partner when he's here and engaged. And here's the things we do to make you feel welcome, which has been 100% the truth. My partner is involved in more clubs than I am at Darden. People walk up to me and they say, oh, you're Jen's partner. I'm like, Jen's partner? Jen's my partner. What are you talking about? The Darden Military Association played a huge role. Frankly, just being, again, my mentor was a DMA alum, and then just talking to the Darden Military Association students that were here at the time. Hey, what does this thing look like? What is the support that you provide? What does the DMA alumni support network look like? It just felt like it was going to be an instant fit. And then, frankly, something to consider for all folks when you're looking at business schools is scholarship opportunities, right? So one thing that sets Darden apart is it's a public school. So your GI Bill funding goes very far here. And then additionally, there's the opportunity to receive scholarships that are walled off and restricted to military veterans. I think last time I checked, there are 11, and that's not just one for one. So multiple students can receive that, each of those 11 scholarships. So very long-winded, but that's kind of how I went into my thought process of ending up at Darden.
Well, that's super organized and methodical, Myles. I mean, to tick through it in that way. Thank you for doing that. I appreciate your note about your partner's experience. I think that's great. Actually resonates with a lot of what we've heard from DPA members or students who have partners when they come on the podcast, and they end up sharing that, yeah, their partner is even more involved in the Darden community than they are, which I think is great, because moving to Charlottesville, it's a smaller town, it's a college town. And so people always want to know what's that experience going to be like, not just for me as a student, but for my partner, spouse, significant other who's also going to be on this journey with me. It's an important question.
No, Darden's extremely partner forward, partner friendly, but also families, right? I think the DMA disproportionately, just because a lot of them skew a little bit older, have families, but just overall, even folks that are non-military, the family culture here, I've never seen or heard of an event where, partners or families are not invited. Everyone loves getting out on Flagler Courtyard, whether it's for a cold call or some other kind of Darden Cup event, and meeting young kids, seeing the toddlers, bringing your dogs. Darden's extremely partner forward, and for that, I'm very thankful.
Well, you mentioned the students you sat next to in quarter one of core. Let's take a moment for your section. What section were you?
I was Section A. Go Lions.
All right. What was your favorite thing about being part of Section A?
Section A, no offense to other sections, we have, in my opinion, the best professors. So I'm not sure if they rotate. I'm pretty sure, from finance to accounting. So Mark Lipson, finance professor. It actually was funny. I was at a client this summer, and there happened to be surrounded by a good number of Darden alums, and we all had Mark Lipson for, as he likes to say, finance. So we had a good laugh, just remembering kind of the lessons that Mark taught us. And then also just like the spirit, right? Like Section A, runner up last year in the Darden Cup. But if there was an award for most involved or highest spirit to core, definitely would have been Section A.
Appreciate that nod to the pronunciation of finance. When we did office hours with this is a faculty conversation series that we have. The first one was with Rich Evans, who also teaches finance, and we asked him to explain the difference between finance and finance. And then Mark Lipson also came on office hours, and it was a lot of fun to talk with him. But as the person doing the questioning of Mark, I had to remember it's finance. So just a guide for myself. I think it's so funny. I really they seem to have a good time with it, and I think it's a fair reflection. I mean, the students and faculty, I think, particularly through that section experience, my sense is that they really get to know each other well, and the faculty really are excited to be part of that first year student experience, just like they're excited to teach electives. But that's a particularly momentous moment for the students as they come in. They're new Darden students. They're trying to figure it all out, and the faculty play a really important role in helping students kind of orient to what it means to be a Darden student.
Yeah, absolutely. I don't think I necessarily understood what it meant by like, hey, Darden has the top ranked faculty for, a decade straight or whatever it may be. But then showing up here on campus, and I always tell students this when I'm doing interviews or doing tours of Darden, the faculty here are fully and wholly invested in you. And the fact that they open their home to you, whether it's doing a Friendsgiving or a Sunday brunch, they come to your events, whether it's a Darden Cup event or you're doing something out in town, whether it's auctioning off time with them or experiences with them during the Building Goodness in April auction. My marketing professor last year, I won the auction event for his experience. So he took us to shoot sporting clays, and then he took us to his stable to meet his horse, his daughter's horse. And then afterwards, he invited us into his home to cook us his family's secret recipe. And so it's just an incredible experience how much the professors are invested in you and involved in you. They're the ones that are actually grading your exams and your tests, and they're giving you feedback. They're always open to come meet you, whether it's during office hours or by appointment. First coffee. You can't go to any first coffee and look around and not see a professor. You're going to see multiple professors that are there. They're engaged. They want to see you be successful. They can be your sounding board, as well as many of them will tell you, it's how some Darden cases get written, is when you go forth into the big world of business and you need support or you have a question, you reach back to your professors and they're open and honest and they're willing to help you or provide mentorship or connect you with someone. That to me is kind of like, hey, the number one faculty experience. That's really what it boils down to.
Well, Myles, I'm curious about your first year experience. It sounds like you had a great experience in Section A. And I always just love to hear the section pride. For our listeners, you should know, if you've been listening to the podcast, you might know this already, but the sections, they all have mascots, cheers, colors. The sections become the basis for competition through the Darden Cup. There's a lot that happens around the section experience. But I'm curious about the adjustment to being a Darden student, to being a first year student. What are some of the things you learned through that process that you might encourage folks coming behind you to think about?
Yeah, so I think the first thing was just the early on support. So from the moment, I accepted my position at Darden, they gave us like classes to take over the summer, which might not seem like the most exciting, but for someone like me that was having a big pivot, and especially for accounting, I had, zero introduction to accounting. I really appreciated the kind of go at your own pace opportunity to really just like dip your toe into the world. Same thing for finance as well. And then also, again, before school started, I had the opportunity to attend Darden Before Darden, which is kind of like a somewhat watered down, maybe like 10-day program before opening week, where students like myself who are doing a harder pivot, or international students who might be nervous about using their second language in a 70-person room environment, can really kind of like come together and check out what this Darden case method business school experience is like. And then finally, I had some what I perceived as like weaknesses, right? So it's like, again, these hard skills. When I was in the Marine Corps, I used Excel to track like chow rosters. So like which of my Marines have their MREs for like an upcoming field exercise. I didn't use it to do any kind of modeling. I wasn't really immersed in like the functions. Maybe some was kind of like the best function that I knew or the one that I used the most, something like that. So I was a little bit nervous, especially having been out of the classroom for at this point like 7 years. How is it going to be transitioning back into the classroom? Maybe some imposter syndrome, right? Like, do I actually belong in this room with my peers who have all these amazing accomplishments, have done all these amazing things? They've kind of already shown their worth in the business world and the business environment, right? But Darden does a really good job, again, providing me opportunities to kind of like ease myself in, but also like once you're here, especially with opening week, letting you know, like, one, we're a community. A rising tide lifts all boats. You're going to learn more from your peers than frankly you do from our world-class professors, right? And then also just the amount of resources are here on campus, whether it's tutoring or OSA, so Office of Student Affairs, plus just the other student groups and clubs, partners, everything. It makes it really hard to see how you couldn't succeed.
I appreciate your sharing all of that. I do think like everybody has some kind of learning curve when you come. I think there's a tendency, graduate school, business programs, however you want to define this, people try to project this thing where you got it all figured out, you know exactly what you're doing, and you look around and maybe it's a lot of people doing this. But I think the most important thing to remember is everybody's new at this, and if you remember anything from being new at something, it's like we're all learning here. Maybe some people know a little bit more about a subject than others, and maybe people are a little bit more familiar with something than other people. But you're all in this together. To your point, you have the opportunity to learn from each other. I'm so struck, like when I observe a case discussion with students. I think this is something that's fascinating about the Darden classroom, and I don't know if our listeners know this, that the students talk to each other. They are oftentimes, they may talk to the faculty member, but they're more often talking to each other as they're having a case discussion. And that's different than how we kind of typically think about class, where you talk to the professor directly. I think that's such an interesting thing.
No, I think professors actually kind of use that as a temperature check for how well their class is going. Sometimes they'll even say like, hey, I'm doing too much talking. You love when you can see a professor kind of step off to the side of the classroom and the students are really driving the conversation, asking the questions, answering the questions, having the debates, whatever that may be, depending on the class style. And they love that, right? Sometimes you'll ask a question to the professor and they'll say, don't ask me, like ask your classmates. And someone will have to raise their hand and kind of give their take, whatever that may be.
Yeah, we asked Rich Evans this question of like what he enjoys about the case method. And he said the best version of the case method, he's not talking at all. He's actually standing a bit to the side. And I do think this is a little bit different than how people think about school. We get so used to like you come into the classroom, the professor enters the classroom, they tell you everything that you need to know. And this is a spoiler, I suppose, for our listeners. The faculty are not going to tell you an answer. They actually think that that's of like limited utility. They'll correct, sort of technical misunderstandings along the way, but they readily acknowledge there's multiple ways to solve these problems that you're wrestling with. That exercising judgment, doing that in a social environment, hearing from other people, having to communicate. These are the things that are going to serve you better in the long run than focusing on a specific answer to a particular problem.
No, I completely agree. Frankly, for accounting, sometimes there is a right or wrong answer. But for so many classes here, whether it's ethics or strategy or leading organizations, there is no right answer, and there's no one way to crack the nut. So just if don't be uncomfortable when you leave the classroom, and there's not necessarily a nice, tidy ending to whatever that day's case might have been.
Well, Myles, let's talk a little bit about your summer. So, where were you this summer, and how did it go?
It was great. So I was with McKinsey and Company, based out of their Charlotte office. Even though I was based out of Charlotte, my client was in Houston. I was an oil and gas client. I was on a large scale transformation for them. It was an incredible experience. I was really drawn to consulting from when I originally talked to the mentor that kind of led me on my path to Darden. The way that I looked at recruiting consulting. If I was going to get a foundational business education at Darden, I saw consulting as kind of like the finishing school or the residency for that education. I didn't know necessarily what industries or functions that I wanted to go into. So for me, I viewed consulting as a way to try a lot of things really fast, see what I'm good at, see what I like doing, see if those things match up, and try and go from there.
All right. Well, Charlotte's my hometown. I won't indulge our listeners in like a weird rabbit hole conversation about Charlotte, but it's a good place to be. It's a nice town, maybe bigger than people think. So lots going on. Lots going on there.
Yeah, I loved it. It was based in Plaza Midwood, if you know where that area is.
I do. So we'll catch up about that at another time, Miles. So you come into your second year. We talked with a lot of second year students. We kind of, in this fall period, we are oftentimes on the podcast talking with student leaders about leadership roles they've taken on, because this is a big part of the second year experience, typically taking on an active role, shaping the Darden community, oftentimes through student leadership for second year students. And so as you approached your second year, what was important to you? What were your priorities?
Yeah, so first year is kind of a grind to a certain degree, right? You show up, you're a little anxious, you don't necessarily have everything figured out yet. It's a long process, but it goes by very fast, especially for someone in consulting. Most of the consulting interviews and offers for internships happen just after the first of the year, so really before Q3 has even started. But throughout that process, impacts are made on you, right? Whether it's through professional clubs or affinity clubs or other sports clubs you want to be involved in. So for me, I wanted to be very intentional about the groups that I was going to be involved in and make sure it was ones that I really cared about, but also give back. I think there's a huge culture of giving back at Darden, especially as like second years. You kind of look around, you think, oh my gosh, like the second years did so much of this. Darden enabled it and empowered it, whether it's with financial resources or helping you strategize and figure out how to do it. But I'm just amazed, and I still am amazed at how much of Darden's culture is driven and supported by second year students. So for me, the things that I was most pumped about was one, getting back to the Darden Military Association. Back to, again, I hate to keep returning to this, but I probably wouldn't be here if I hadn't come across that mentor who was a DMA alum. All the help and support that I got throughout my transition, from interview prep, resume prep, essay prep. Hey, what is life like there? Can my partner talk to your wife about life at Darden? So it can be a big, scary world if you don't have that support. The DMA provided me that support. So it's something that I was passionate about giving back. And the next one was just the general, Darden experience. Going back to my Darden interview, when that student's face popped up and we had a very conversational interview, I was just engrossed in like, wow, something that can be me helping to teach people about Darden, but also help Darden figure out, the right students for those 350 seats every year.
Well, for our listeners who may not know so much about the DMA, the Darden Military Association, what would you want them to know about this student organization?
Yeah, so I guess first and foremost is probably the DMA is not just for veterans, right? It's interesting, but we're actually a minority in our own group. So when you account for partners and allies, we call them battle buddies. The actual veterans who are in the DMA are outnumbered, which to me is incredible show of support from our allies in the community and the partners as well. So it's not just about military members. In fact, that's kind of one of our core objectives is broadening our reach, demystifying what the military is to folks that may not have, had a service member in their family, have never interacted with the military, international students, right? The U.S. has a very unique culture with the military. So a lot of folks have just never had the opportunity to have the military demystified for them. So it's not just for military members, it's really for the entire Darden and really greater Charlottesville community.
Well, along those lines, what are your goals for the year? We're recording this conversation in late October. As you look ahead, months to come, what do you hope to accomplish with the DMA?
Yeah, so me and the co-president, Malcolm Dunlop, we were very intentional when we sat down and kind of like, all right, the DMA is ours. What do we want it to be like over the next year, right? Because you get 100% leadership turnover for the clubs every year. It can be very short. And so tying into that, I think not just the DMA, but a lot of the student clubs at Darden really suffered a lot of institutional memory loss during COVID. In fact, the second years when I showed up on campus didn't have the opportunity to meet their second years in person until nearly graduation, right? And again, because you have 100% leadership turnover, it's kind of like, all right, what did the DMA look like prior to COVID? And so our top goal was just really, hey, let's return this thing to what it looked like around 2019, and then we can pass it off refreshed to our first years, the class of 24. So that's the overarching goal. I think kind of embedded in that, the first thing is first year and second year career support. So as an affinity club, we have an incredible network. In fact, I always tell folks the first person that I talked to at every firm was a Darden Military Association alumni. It's just been incredible how much give back they're willing to give. And a lot of times, and the DMA tries to do this too, folks will take off their hat. They'll take off their firm hat. They'll take off their Darden hat and say, hey, I'm a veteran first. I'm going to provide you the best advice that I can from a veteran's perspective. And then, they can put on their respective hats later and kind of give you the pitch, if that may be. So first year and second year career support is our top priority, making sure that our folks, as they transition out of the military with their family, are landing in a role, hopefully in a city as well, that they're excited about, they're jazzed about, and they're going to want to help give back to the DMA as well. The next thing is strengthen the DMA network. As you know, folks used to come to Darden a lot, whether it was for recruiting events or scholarship dinners and just all kinds of events. A lot of that paused during COVID. So for us, just making sure that we have strong ties to our alumni, to our donors, to make sure, one, we are carrying and doing the right thing for this organization to make sure that it's robust and strong going forward. But also to just let folks know what we're doing. A lot of times folks they want to know, hey, who from the DMA was a Genovese scholarship winner? Or when someone like John Strangfeld comes back and has a dinner, we'll shoot him a photo of the DMA still getting together. John, although he's not a veteran, is the godfather of the DMA, created that when he was in a leadership position at the Darden Foundation. The next one is transitioning and admission support. So again, we're vet first. This year, round one just closed, and we've had 135 veterans reach out that are interested in coming to Darden. And that's not just a one conversation, right? So a lot of times it's an initial conversation. Hey, let me maybe try and dispel some myths or provide some advice. Here's what Darden looks like. But then it's follow-up. It's resume reviews. It's essay support. Hey, I think maybe you should think about this. It can also be interview preparation. It can be help with housing, how to navigate the GI Bill, how to navigate the reserves, if that's something you want to do and come to Darden, stuff like that. But also, in many ways, we're recruiting our future network, right? Hopefully, when I'm out there as a DMA alumni and I'm looking back for my firm, for our affinity, I want to have a really strong, talented pool to reach back into. Finally, kind of broadening our reach, right? I touched on it a little bit. We need to show folks in the community what the Darden Military Association is out, whether that's through philanthropic events. We hosted a Ukrainian fundraiser last year. Many of us had served with Afghan translators. And so a lot of them, when they were getting rehomed in the Virginia area, we had a clothing drive, an incredible clothing drive that made the local news, right? And then just operating and being good brand ambassadors for the military within the Darden and Charlottesville community.
Well, make no small plans, Myles. That's quite a bit. I think you take through 5, 6, maybe plus different things. That's great and amazing to hear the number of prospective students you're engaging with. It's not super surprising. I know this from our executive MBA and to a certain extent part-time MBA experience. Obviously, it's early days with the part-time MBA, but we also have some veterans in that population too. I do think that there's a real desire, folks from this background who want to connect with people who've kind of been in that world, have come to an MBA program, navigated all of this, may even have some insights around career goals. Because my impression from talking to a fair number of veterans is, okay, I've been in this very structured world. I always knew the next thing and the next thing and the next thing. And now I'm getting out. I'm moving into this much more ambiguous moment in my life, in my career. And oh, by the way, I'm doing school. How's all this going to work? And to be able to connect with somebody who's been through that can be super helpful.
No, it's great at reducing anxiety. We have great connections with the Darden Executive Veterans, which is the EMBA program, kind of the version of the DMA. Lots of hey, let's meet up. We're going to the same Veterans Career Conference. Maybe we can share merch anytime those folks are in town, or vice versa. Always look each other up. Same thing, and I've had a couple of really great positive interactions with the folks in the inaugural part-time program as well, especially with the proximity to DC. There's a lot of veteran population there that wants to continue their education, whether they're pivoting or trying to do that to further their military career as well.
Any specific advice you would want to give here for veterans as they're thinking about this next step? Obviously, we always ask a general advice question, but maybe a little bit of a riff on that here. Say, let's speak directly to our listeners who have perhaps a military service background.
I guess the first one is, it's going to be okay. Like, don't worry. It is a big, scary world out here as far as, when you're in the military, you have a pretty standard career progression, everything from promotion to billets or roles you're going to fill. You generally kind of know what is out there and what's possible. It's a little bit wider out here, kind of in the business world, the world that I'm currently entering, right? But it's going to be okay. There's a ton of support out there through Darden and other like veteran networks. There's a great service that I use and I now volunteer for called Service to School. So I guess the first thing is just like reach out, right? Do some research, talk with folks, visit if you get the opportunity. Again, vet first. I always tell folks like, hey, you're doing great reaching out and talking to me. I hope you're doing that at other programs as well, right? Because you can't beat kind of the ground truth, talking to folks, getting their opinion, going to the school, seeing it, especially if you can go on a day when school is in session, right? The next thing is the DMA does not just exist for veterans or even, it doesn't exist just for U.S. veterans or just for veterans, right? So we have members of the DMA who are veterans of the Israeli military, the Korean military, and several others. So it's not just U.S. focused, but again, we're a minority in our own club. So there's tons of ways to come here and get involved in the DMA once you're on campus or even before, let us know. Specifically for the folks, again, very partner and family forward and friendly. So even if you're not a veteran, but you have kids, a lot of the veterans have kids, and they kind of want to know like what's this transition thing look like with kids to Darden. I've learned way more about nanny than I ever thought that I would during my time at Darden. It's great to kind of have the knowledge on the back burner if and when that comes my time in life. But it's just an incredible opportunity. We're very welcoming, very friendly, and don't hesitate to reach out.
Well, Myles, is there anything you're looking forward to, you're excited about in the months ahead?
Yeah, I think a couple things. The first and foremost is the ski trip. The ski trip's coming up. I've only ever skied actually in the Marine Corps, which is not as great of an experience as what we're going to have in Park City. Last year, they were in Whistler. I was a little bit nervous with the COVID environment, getting stuck in Canada, knowing I had interviews coming up. I also hadn't skied that much before. So I forewent that opportunity. This year, my partner and I decided like, hey, we definitely want to give this skiing thing a shot. So let's go out to Park City with the Darden Outdoors Club, a lot of our close friends, and give it a chance. I guess the next thing will probably be helping first years as they prepare for interviews, specifically in consulting, and then guiding them through the process. I know just one, the huge sense of relief, but also the excitement of the preparation, specifically for like the kind of esoteric, case interview, and then just the excitement when you receive an offer that you're so excited about, you can't wait, that hey, like I'm going to be employed this summer, big monkeys off your back. It's all been worth it. And then Darden Worldwide courses. So I'm super excited for the Darden Worldwide courses. I also forewent that last year, huge regret. So one, if you're listening to this, you're going to Darden your first year, go on a worldwide course, make it work with your internship, however you have to. Also join the DOC so you can get really good Patagonia Darden swag. If that's the only reason you join the DOC, which it shouldn't be, but if that's the only reason you join, make sure you join so you can get some DOC swag. I didn't do those two things my first year, and I regret it. I think finally, UVA basketball season, right? So I went to the Duke game last year. It was fantastic seeing kind of Coach K's final season. But one of the things I was super excited about coming back to UVA or other schools was just like the ACC sports culture. Love going to tailgates for the football game. The DMA always hosts a tailgate, but also just the basketball games. When you're in JPJ, the stadium, and it's rocking, it's a close game, may come down to a buzzer beater. You really just can't beat the electricity that's in the room.
Yeah, UVA men's basketball top 20 preseason rankings. So reasons to, well, it's always exciting time. Basketball season, it's fair to say, is the hottest ticket. The men's basketball team, the hottest ticket in town. But football, they're getting there. They're getting there. Off a win against Georgia Tech on Thursday night. So you never know what's possible. So, well, Myles, it's been so much fun talking with you, and thank you for all the advice and insight that you've shared here. So, and good luck with everything that you're doing with the DMA. It sounds like y'all have got a lot planned. I have no doubt that y'all will find a way to get it all done.
Awesome, Brett. Thank you so much.
And that was my interview with Myles Stroud, a second-year student in our full-time MBA class of 2023 and one of the co-presidents of the Darden Military Association. As always, if you have any comments, suggestions, requests, anything you'd like for us to cover here on the podcast, we're all ears. We can be reached at Darden, that's DARDEN, @virginia.edu. Until next time, stay safe, be well, and thanks for listening.